The topic for today is about launching Blockbuster Pharma Brands and some of the learnings that we have had with Atacana, working with 6 of the top 10 pharmaceutical companies. For those of you that don't know me, I started my CI career in 2003 as an intern at a CI agency. I got fascinated by the subject and I did a lot of academic research on the role of competitive intelligence in biotech. I published 2 papers in Nature Biotech, and then I've been doing CIs since then. In 2008, I joined Readiness Pharma in the global headquarters in Basel. I was a CI manager. I got promoted to global head of competitive intelligence, and my role was to really build the CI function for Novartis across the pharmaceutical division. Then I got recruited into Roche to restructure the CI function, centralize it, and then grow it. And working in both companies, one of the key aspects of my role was to really be involved in the product launches, and something that has always fascinated me. And it's one of the areas where I think there's a lot of senior management and interest to see how things are being done. And since starting at Atacana in 2016, a lot of the work that we have been doing has been either tracking competitor launches or helping our clients to launch new products into the marketplace. And what I want to do today is share with you 3 frameworks that I think will help you think through what do you need to do if you're tracking a competitor product launch, but also if you're supporting your organization to launch a new product. The first framework is the value framework for high growth. The second one is the CI launch assessment. And the third one is the competitive readiness framework. So all these 3 frameworks, we've been using them. And I'm really excited to share those with you because I think if you implement at least parts of them, I think you'll get a lot of value in your day-to-day activities. For those of you that know me, I tend to talk fast. I do have an accent. English is my 3rd language, and I tend to cover a lot of content, so pay attention and take good notes. One of the things I want to do is to first set the stage on where are we living today, and it's clear that the competitive pressure in the pharmaceutical industry are increasing, and if we look at the returns of investment over the years, have been going down. This is from research done by our friends at Deloitte. And also what they're seeing is that the average cost to bring a drug to the market is also increasing. So you're getting less return from the investment. The investment are being more significant. And also the peak sales per asset is going down. So what we're seeing is that the pharmaceutical industry is not as attractive as it used to be 10, 20 years ago. And on top of that, the number of clinical studies is going up. The number of competitors per indication is also going up. So gaining a competitive edge has become a necessity. And I think for us in competitive intelligence, it's a very exciting time because there's a greater need for intelligence to really have a differentiated strategy, a unique messaging and positioning. And I think competitive intelligence can add a lot of value into that. Even though the industry as a whole is not as attractive as it was 20 years ago, I think we're still seeing some exception to this. And the case study that comes to mind is Moderna, where we saw a David versus Goliath scenario where a small biotech company was able to bring a product to the market, the COVID vaccine, where a lot of the big pharma companies were not able to do it. And I think what's interesting from the Moderna case is the strategies comes from insight into new sources of strength and weaknesses. So it's important us as CI professionals to really understand where can we get new sources of strength and new sources of weakness. How can we help a client identify those areas of strength and of strength? And then the other thing for me that was relevant looking at Moderna was really looking at how can we see things from a different perspective. And I think COVID gave us the luxury to have a little bit more time, at least for us, at least for me. And that kind of incentivized me to really looking a little bit more into Moderna, but then really looking beyond the pharmaceutical industry and really understand how our company coping with the changes in the marketplace, how they're coping with COVID, and what can we learn that we can bring back into the pharmaceutical industry. So in So this year I decided to enroll in a 2-year program with the Harvard Business School. It's called the Owner President Management Program. And here we get to see how companies operate. And a lot of the case studies that we looked at was really how companies were coping with COVID. And also in the class is all owners of businesses. So we're able to hear also from our peers on how they're managing their business and dealing with this changing environment. One of the highlights of the Harvard program was to meet with the CEO of Moderna, Stefan Bancel, and really understand from him what did it take to break all the rules and be able to really bring to the marketplace a new vaccine in record time, which was less than a year. And this year, which is the first year in sales, they're expected to hit about $20 billion in sales. And based on the conversation with him, based on the course of Harvard, then this is where the first framework that I want to share with you comes from. So when we look at the framework for high growth, then it's really looking at how do a company creates value. And the first step is really looking at the environment. And from the Moderna case, they really identified that COVID was a big issue. Bancel had a direct connection with Dr. Fauci in the CDC. They really understood that it was going to be big and that they needed to take action. So really understand the environment where competitive intelligence plays a big role. It's something that all companies needs to have, if they want to take advantage of the opportunities that fast-changing environment like today presents. The second one is the strategy, right? Once you understand the environment, then you need to decide what are the activities that you're going to do as an organization or as a brand to be successful. And for Moderna, they invested in exponential technologies. We have the messenger RNA, they invested in artificial intelligence, digital manufacturing, and that gave them really the platform to really then beat big pharma in the development of the vaccine in record time. The third one that is important then is once you understand the environment, once you have a strategy, then it's really about execution, right? Are you fast? Are you agile enough that you can change your strategy, you can change your approach based on what's happening in the marketplace? One of the things that the CEO of Moderna shared is not only this ability to change, but also this ability to being bold. And one of the things that he does with his leadership team is at each meeting he asks them, how can we do things 10 times better? How can we do things 100 times better? And this idea of exponential mindset, this idea of being bold also plays a big role in how much you can execute and how much you can grow a brand. So again, having big goals and this ability to move quickly becomes really important. So when we looked at this framework, then for me it was really important, okay, how can we apply this to competitive intelligence? How can we apply this to the work that we currently do with our clients? And when we think about value, then I think each one of us as a professional really need to understand what is the value that we bring to the table. For us at Atacana is to help our clients develop a winning strategy. For you, it might be a little bit different, but I think this idea of having a clear value proposition is very important. Then when we look at the environment, for us is helping our clients have predictive intelligence, really understand what the future looks like. And similar to you is when you do competitive intelligence, when you look in the environment, what is the value they bring to your internal stakeholders or to your clients. When we talk about strategy and we think about a launch brand, then for us is really the stakeholder engagement. There's multiple functions that work together to bring a product to the market, from medical to communications to marketing, sales, public relations, investor relations. So it's really understanding what those stakeholders have, and then how can we influence them so they can take action on the intelligence that we're providing, and hopefully that also has an impact on the strategy. The third piece that you need to think about is on the execution. How are you helping your stakeholders or your clients to execute the strategy? I think a lot of times when we think about competitive intelligence, we really think about strategy, but I think there's a bigger role with CI to also think about how can we execute. And for us, it's really about competitive readiness. So one thing is providing intelligence, but then how can we help our clients have a process in place that they can take action on that intelligence. And I'll share a little bit more around that. If you're able to do that, then you can see here the overlaps. One, if we understand the stakeholders and we have the intelligence, then we really can provide the client directional clarity. If we have the intelligence and we have the processes to take action on that intelligence, then we do have actionable insights. And then similarly, if we have the processes and the competitive readiness, and we understand the stakeholder, then really we can have an exponential advantage and a differentiated strategy versus the competition. So to really understand the stakeholder needs, this is the framework that we use. So we call this the CI Launch Assessment Framework. This is the framework that I use to talk to our clients, especially the first time I meet with them and when they reach out to us. And the first question is really, why do they want to do this project? Clearly, they are going to be launching a product, or they're interested in learning about competitor launch of the product. But there's a little bit more to that, right? One is the context. Where are they in their thinking? What are they with their baseline knowledge? Then talking about outcomes, what are they trying to achieve? If we get the right intelligence, what kind of actions are going to be taken, and what does good look like? And the third component here is really the scope, right? A lot of times, some clients or some stakeholders want everything under the sky, and it's our job to really help them refine the scope to make sure that the requirements are really fit for purpose, but they can also be actionable. Once you understand that, then we go into the what. So here's really understanding what are their goals and how they're planning to shape the market. What are they doing to shape the brand, or how they're thinking about shaping the brand based on the TPP, based on the data that they have. And the third one is how they're going to shape the organization, how they're going to build up the field force, the MSLs, and how they're going to ramp up both at the global, regional, and local level. So if we understand that and we have the context of the project, then we're in a much better position than before. And then the third part is really how they're planning to do that. And I think this is one of the key areas where we need to focus when thinking about the key intelligence requirements is what are the internal events that are coming up within the organization, and what kind of knowledge or what kind of questions do they have for them to be able to make an informed decision. Then we need to have a good understanding of the external events. That can be a product launch, it can be new guidelines, it can be clinical trial results. And then what are the questions around those events that have an impact into their strategy, into their forecast, or how they communicate with the investment community. And the third one is really understanding the client key assumptions about the marketplace, about competition, about their brand. And our job as a professional is to really help them identify if those assumptions are becoming obsolete or there are changes that might make that assumption less relevant. So I highly recommend everyone to take a screenshot and really use this every time that you talk to your stakeholders to really understand where they're coming from, what they need, and then what are the areas where you can add the most value in their strategy and also on their execution. Once we have the understanding, then it's really about start monitoring the environment. We recommend continuous monitoring. Here's the process that I published in Nature Biotech. This is the same process that I use on Novartis, they use at Roche, and they're currently using at Atacana. It's very simple, but again, it's not necessarily easy to implement. And as you can see here at the top, is really about the intelligence requirements. And the prior framework that I showed you is really to help you understand what are the requirements, but then really understand where can we have an impact on the strategy. So once you have the continuous monitoring, that's not enough though. The next step in the process is the threat assessment. So again, as we get information, depending where the client is, if they're new to a therapeutic area, then probably we need to do a more in-depth threat assessment, and we need to look at all the competitors. Or if the client already knows the space very well, then it might be at a lighter level, more high-level touch base. But the key thing here is to really have a systematic way on how the organization looks at threats or opportunities. Have a clear understanding what are the criteria on how they're going to label something as a threat or as an opportunity. And at the end of this exercise, you end up with a matrix that looks something like that, where you identify what is the threat to the client. So if we're looking at competitor launches, then it's really looking at what is the threat to the client. and then what is the adoption potential for the competitor. And hopefully you have a very well differentiated matrix here that you really understand where you need to focus. And as new data comes out, new clinical data comes out, then you have a way to reassess that data and say, okay, this competitor is becoming a bigger threat, or this competitor is not a threat anymore. And then this helps you then with the next step in the competitor readiness process, which is the competitor workshop, right? So once you have all the information, once you really understand where you need to focus on, then it's really about having a cross-functional team look at the information and really define where you want to play, how you're planning to win, what are the capabilities that you must have or that you need to develop. And then if you're talking with senior management, then what are the management systems that you need to have to be able to implement the strategy and keep track of the execution. So hopefully in today's call, I have provided some value. We covered 3 frameworks. The first one is the value framework for high growth. So really this idea of understanding that to create value, there's 3 parts to it. One is the environment, which I think a lot of us are playing today. Then the second part is the strategy, finding how we're going to play. And I think a lot of the work that we do really fits into the strategy. And then the third part is execution. I think it's the area as a CI professional. I think there's still room for improvement to really work with the people to really understand how we execute based on the execution, then just get the feedback from the marketplace and adapt that execution. The second framework is the CI launch assessment. I think this is a great framework for you to use when you're talking to your stakeholders or to your client to really understand what the needs are from a CI point of view, and to really understand what are the touch points where you can influence the strategy and the execution. So you're better prepared when you do the analysis to really know how your work fits into the bigger picture. And the last one is the competitive readiness framework. Again, there's 3 parts to it, is the continuous monitoring of the landscape, having a system on how you assess the threats, sometimes a workshop, sometimes it can be a top-level meeting, and then really this idea of the competitive workshop can be scenario planning, it can be wargaming, where you really bring that cross-functional team to look at the intelligence and come with concrete actions on how they're gonna act on the intelligence. Again, we have a limited amount of time today, so I cannot go very deep in each one of these frameworks. However, we still have a few minutes where I can address any Q&A. And again, happy to set up a call to talk about the frameworks or to talk about the work we're doing at Takana. You can email me at salvador@takana.com. So looking forward to your questions, and thank you for your time today.